to everybody for joining today at Plaza Artist Materials virtual event, of course. Today, I'm going to do pop art painting techniques with the Sennelier abstract acrylics. As Tara mentioned, my name is Andrew Cook. I'm the education manager for Savoir-Faire, which is a division of McPherson's. We import and represent companies like Sennelier and Fabriano. I myself have been making art for as long as I can remember, and I've been in the art supply industry for more than a decade, working with companies like Sennelier. So for some of you, you may not be familiar with Sennelier already. So for those of you who don't know, Sennelier is a paint manufacturer. They began making paint in a small store in Paris, not too far from the Louvre. Today, I'll be showing you some of their newest innovative products with the abstract acrylics. But we can talk more about that as we get going and we get to play with some of the materials I've got here. I know that one of the first questions that's going to come up is about what I'm painting on. So today I'm painting on the Fabriano 1264 mixed media paper. And you may ask why it is called 1264. And that is to call out kind of the notoriety and the history of the brand, because Fabriano has been making paper in the town of Fabriano in Italy since 1264. So for more than 750 years, they've been perfecting the art of paper and innovating the entire way. So the 1264 is the brand new range that just came out, and we're going to get a chance to play with it here before most people have even seen it. Now, as far as what we're going to be talking about, what we're going to be playing with, you may wonder what's so special about pop art and why does it pertain to today's demo? So I wanted to explain that a little bit. I wanted to experiment with the materials and techniques for a few reasons. First, it's a lot of fun. It can lead to all kinds of experimentation in your own work, your own studio, or your own art materials playground. Like me, I'm on my dining room table today, so it's a great place to start out. The second reason I wanted to do this was because you may not know, but today is tomorrow, actually, sorry, not today. Tomorrow is Andy Warhol's birthday. And if he was around today, he'd be 93 years old. So Andy Warhol made a lot of massive changes to people's perception of art. And while there were a lot of critics, the fact that his name is known in nearly every household is a testament to the importance he had in forging a path for modern art and contemporary art of today. The third reason is that the tools and techniques that we're playing with are useful for a lot beyond the simple painting that we're going to experiment with today. You can use it for everything from small greeting cards to large scale murals. So we'll have a lot of opportunity to experiment and just try out some fun materials. So with that, I'm going to flip my camera a little bit, and we'll start playing with some of this stuff. So like I said, we're working on the 1264, and I've got a lot of the abstract acrylics by Sennelier over here. So with this project today, I wanted to do a step-by-step to kind of show you what I would do to get something like this going. So first, I mean, obviously you have to have the materials. So I know many of you have ordered the materials or have some of these materials in your studio already. Of course, you can substitute out as necessary if there's things you already have, but you got to have the materials to start. That's where the fun begins with picking it all out. So the 1264 pad I have today is the mixed media pad. And I really like the mixed media pad because it's a heavyweight paper that takes a lot of different materials. And most of the time when I'm using this for work in my studio, I'm going to leave the pages in the book just for ease of use. I'll let it dry and then I'll turn to the next page. But today, just to keep things simple and for part of the project, I'm actually going to tear my page out. And for those of you that have the sample kit, you got some sheets of this. And I personally put those in those little bags for you. So you're going to see that it's folded in half. And I did that strategically, not just so it would fit in the bag, but because I'm going to fold it in half today. So it saves you one of the little steps. And part of the reason I'm folding it in half is you can draw lines if you want. You don't have to fold your paper, but I just like being able to see see the creases. It kind of saves me the trouble of drawing, and I know it's exactly down the center. So I fold it like as we'd hear when we were kids. I'll fold it like a hamburger, and then I'm going to open it back up. I'm going to fold it like a taco. So it doesn't have to be perfect. Don't worry if it doesn't line up exactly, but I just want 4 segments of the paper that are relatively similar. And then with that, I happen to tape it down on my surface here. You don't have to tape it, but I did just so that it doesn't wiggle around too much while I'm on the camera. But I tape it down. And that way I can see there's four segments. Now, one of the reasons that I wanted to have 4 segments is because of the pop art theme, the Andy Warhol's birthday. I went through and I looked at a lot of his artwork, and so much of it has similar or the same image segmented out into groupings. So for today, I wanted to be able to create something that's using kind of an iconic image or just a quick doodle that I wanted to create, and create 4 panels of that to give us that kind of pop art theme. So I'm not big on palettes myself. You can do this on a palette. I do it right on the paper. I'm going to squeeze out some of my Sennelier abstract, just a little dab of my primary blue there. Now the Sennelier abstract is in these pouches, and the pouches are great because I can squeeze it out right on the paper. I can know that exactly as much paint as I want is in there. I can really control how much is coming out. I can see the color through this little window. This is the actual paint colors you're looking at through the windows. And it's 4 ounces, so it's twice as big as your average tube of acrylic paint. So the pouch is really great for all of that. Plus, when it's empty, I can recycle it. But for today, it's just really easy to open it up, squeeze a little bit of paint out. I'm going to do it in opposite corners. And then I'm going to set my blue aside. And I'm going to pick up my pouch of titanium white. And I'm going to open it up. It's real easy to unscrew and screw back on cap. And then I'm going to squeeze out about double the amount of the blue that I put out. So it doesn't have to be exact. We're just having fun today. But because the primary blue is a phthalo base, it's a really intense color. I don't want to have any less than 50% of the blue to the white. So once I squeeze those out, and some artists will tell you not to do this, but I'm not some artist, I like to play. I'm going to mix the colors with my brush right here on the paper. Some people will recommend using a palette knife so you don't bang up your bristles, but I like to have fun and not worry about those things. So I'm going to mix that paint up right there. And then I'm just going to follow my crease. It doesn't have to be perfect. Follow my crease right down the middle there. And fill in this square with blue. And I picked blue kind of arbitrarily just because it's a fun color. I like it. You can do any color you want. Remember with pop art, they're really, really fond of bright colors. So any color you want can go on there. But as long as it's fun, if you have a theme you're working with, go with that color theme. If you're creating cards, you can go with the theme of whatever the card is for. So, I have a really good friend of mine who is about to have a baby. So I'm thinking a lot about, the blue and the pink kind of color scheme. So it's probably in my head that it's going to be bright, and it's going to be blue, and it's going to be pink. Plus I just really love pink, love blue. Those are great colors. So once I've done that, I've got those opposite squares or rectangles kind of coated out. Then I'm going to wipe out my brush. You don't have to, again, wipe out your brush. You could just rinse it. But I wipe all the color out of my brush just so my water doesn't get too dirty. And for some of us, if we're going to go pour our water out later, we don't want it to be super, super gunky when we pour it wherever we're going to pour it. We don't want it to clog our drains or fill our sewer lines. So I'm going to wipe my brush out rinse my brush, get it nice and clean until I wipe it on my dirty towel and then it gets dirty again. All right. And then with that, I'm going to do my second set of squares here. And as I mentioned, I'm going to go with pink. So put out some of my primary red abstract again, in that great little pouch. And this time the red is intense, but it's not as overpowering as the primary blue. So I can go ahead and just mix about the same amount of white, maybe a little more if I want a paler pink. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did with my blue here. Again, you can use a palette knife, but I like to have a little fun and see all these great little striations and mixtures that happen, textures that happen when I'm using the brush. So I sacrifice the life of the brush a little bit when I do that, but it makes me smile, so it's worth it. And then I'm just going to go out and fill in that square with that pink, that rectangle with that pink. Keep saying square, just like we did with the blue. And you can see I'm messy. I leave a lot of marks behind. That's okay with me. I like texture, as you guys are going to see a little bit later as we explore some more of the abstract stuff. Now, don't forget, if you have any questions in the chat, just pop them in there. Like Tara said, if she sees anything that needs an answer, she's more than welcome to interrupt me. Let me know. We'll get some answers for you. So I always take for granted that I play with materials a lot. So for those of you who aren't familiar with acrylic in general, I should mention that acrylic is a really great material for experimenting with. For one, it dries relatively quickly. For two, it's water soluble, so you can clean your brushes with soap and water. You don't have to worry about having any caustic solvents around. As we were talking a little bit earlier, before the call started, I have a couple of cats, and they're relatively young, and they like to get very involved in my art making process. So I like stuff that's going to dry a little bit quicker, just so that I don't end up with too many footprints or too much cat hair mixed into my paint. But at this point, I should probably list it as a medium when I show my work. Acrylic paint and cat hair, that's what it's made.
Hi. Always included. We actually do have a couple of questions.
Fantastic.
All right, Kim asked, I can never pronounce the full name, so I'm going to abbreviate. Was that phthalo blue? I think you said it was primary blue, but it's a phthalo base.
Exactly. So it's
okay.
Primary blue from the Sennelier. It's number 385. It's primary blue. But if we flip it over and we look at the back of the pouch here, and we look at the pigment, it's listed as pigment PB15. And pigment PB15 is phthalo blue. So it is a phthalo blue.
Great. And then the other questions was what brushes are being used. And I think you're using the Plaza Montgomery brushes, right?
I am. I'm playing with the Plaza Montgomery brushes today. Got some filberts, some flats. So far I've been experimenting with them for quite a few weeks now, and they're the right amount of soft and spring kind of combined. They're not as rough as a hog hair bristle, and not as soft as some of the synthetics out there. So I really like they're that in-between stage. They give me a little bit of texture, but they don't scrub away the paint as I'm painting.
Great. Well, thank you. There are a version of a synthetic mongoose. So and how you describe them is exactly how they should perform. So that's great to hear. And Savannah's asking, how do you rank the Sennelier paint versus Liquitex, for example? So it sounds more of
Well, I can speak to the Sennelier paint generally. When it comes to comparing things, it's very subjective. So I won't do a direct comparison, but I'll tell you a little bit about the Sennelier abstract. So Sennelier and Liquitex, actually, a lot of these companies will make multiple types of paint. And that's the one. No, it's not. They'll make multiple types of paint, and that means that they make an artist grade paint like you'd see in oil painting or watercolor. And artist grade paints usually come in a really wide array of colors, over 100, and they are priced based on the pigments that are in there. So it's a lot like buying jewelry. Gold is going to cost a different amount of money than silver. So it's the same with pigments. It's a lot of times it's a mineral. So one mineral can cost more or less than another mineral. So an artist grade paint will have a set of series, with white and browns being series 1, being the least expensive. And then there's more expensive colors like ceruleans and cadmiums. They use heavy metal pigments that cost more to manufacture or mine or produce. Now, there's a step below that, which some people will call a beginner artist paint or a student paint. There's a lot of different names for it out there. The Sennelier abstract, we call it a foundation artist paint. It is really highly pigmented, really great quality, but the price point is uniform across the range. So it's got 60 colors, a little bit less colors than our artist range would have, but each color is chosen based on the intensity of those colors. So you saw how brightly these colors mixed, the blue and the pink. So we chose those because they're so intense, but also they're not super duper expensive. So we're able to keep the price point across the range the same. So whether you're buying a white or a red, the price is going to be the same on the abstract. So the Sennelier paint is a really phenomenal quality. We have just like everybody else, we've got an artist grade and the abstract grade, the foundation artist grade. And one of the really great and sometimes unique things about the Sennelier abstract is that it's manufactured still in our factory in France, in Brittany, France. And we're using the same exact pigments, the same exact binders that you would find in our artist grade paints. We're just tailoring it down, curating those colors to make sure that it's a really affordable range. And not just for people who are starting out, but for people who are working large scale. Abstract is a really great paint for muralists. It's got a lot of opacity, a lot of covering power. So as far as where it ranks, it's I wouldn't quite call it, it's technically in between student and artist somewhere. So it's a high-end student paint is what I would call it. I hope that answered the question. Probably a little too much. All right. And then hey, I'm grabbing one of these Sennelier liners. The 3D liners, they're brand new, really new product on the market. And the cool thing about these is that they're the exact same paint that you're finding in the pouches. Now, Plaza has this awesome set of them where you get 5 primary colors. Well, there aren't 5 primary colors. There's 3 primary colors plus black and white. But it's not the same primaries you'd find in the pouch set. So instead of getting your primary blue, your primary red, and your primary yellow, with these, you're getting your ultramarine blue, your cadmium red light hue, and a primary yellow, plus your black and white. So the liners are a little bit warmer because they're not as designed to mix, because you're drawing with them most often. Now they can still be used with a brush, but they're fantastic for drawing as well. So I know my camera sometimes is a little tough to see, but you can see there's a little tiny tip on the end here, and it's got that heavy body paint in there. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to draw kind of a doodle that I just kind of, I'll tell you why I picked it actually. So I chose, when we were designing this experiment that we're playing with today, I decided to draw just a simple crown. And it was partly in the back of my mind because we're talking about pop art, we're talking about Andy Warhol. And some of you may know another artist by the name of Jean-Michel Basquiat. Basquiat was a New York-based painter, and he was a great friend with Andy Warhol. In fact, a lot of people don't realize they did many collaborative paintings together. And while we're coming up on tomorrow being the birthday of Andy Warhol, in about a week is the anniversary of the death of Jean-Michel Basquiat. So kind of in a thought process that involved both of them, I thought we could use one of his simple forms, which is just a really simplified kind of crown that Basquiat would include in a lot of his paintings.
One of my favorite movies. If anybody hasn't seen it, I highly recommend.
Phenomenal movie, phenomenal movie.
So good.
And the movie is directed by another famous artist in their crowd, Julian Schnabel. And Julian Schnabel is a really fantastic artist as well. So definitely check out that movie if you have not.
What movie?
It's called Basquiat, and it's a biographical, kind of a fictionalized biographical movie on Jean-Michel Basquiat. But it may entice some of you that David Bowie plays Andy Warhol in the movie. So I thought that was a fun direction to go.
A lot of fantastic actors in that movie too.
There are.
Very well done.
Many of you may know the actor Jeffrey Wright. He's done things like the James Bond movies since then, but Basquiat was his first movie. He played Basquiat. All right. So.
Oh, Andrew, I'm sorry, really quick.
Oh yeah.
Sarah's asking, he says, it looks like you were dripping paint on the paper rather than putting nib on the paper. Is that right?
You can do it either way. In this instance, I was drawing directly with the nib on the paper. Over here, the pink paint was a little thicker, so you can, and I'll just do an example of it here because I'm going to switch sheets in a second. So you can draw directly, real hard on the paper, or you can treat it kind of like a 3D printer and just drop it down on the paper. So while I have this in my hand, though, because I think it's getting a little low, I'm going to show you. A lot of people don't realize when they buy that you can actually refill them with the paint out of the pouch. So you can just take your dirty hand like mine and pop the little top off, and then it's a little open bottle. And then I'm going to take this same color. I imagine you could do a different color too. I haven't tried that. You could take the same color. So I'm taking the white here. And what I do is I pinch this just a little bit, because then it creates an air pocket, or a potential for an air pocket, I should say. And then when I squeeze the abstract on the top and I let go, it sucks it right down into the bottle. And then I tap it. I'll do it again, where I create a little blob on top, and then I let go, pulls it right back in there. So these are, yeah.
Oh, sorry. That was a bad introduction.
Not at all. Never.
Sarah wanted to know, is the blue dry already? So I guess, because it kind of looks to me, yep. It is.
So in the thinner spots over here, it's dry. If I touch up here, then I'll get a little on my finger. And granted, so talking about acrylic paint, the abstract paint, and how it dries, the thicker areas obviously take a little longer to dry, but acrylic dry time depends a lot on where we are. Climate, temperature, humidity. So we're all going to have different experiences as far as the dry time goes. I imagine quite a number of you are based in the Northeast, so you might have a little more humidity. The dry time might take a little longer. I'm over in California right now, and it's a little warmer. And plus, I have some spotlights on the work, and that's going to speed up the dry time for me as well. So if you shine a light something on your work, that'll speed it up. All right, so if I drew my lines, we're all dry because I don't want you guys to have to wait for me too long. So now I pulled out one that I did maybe an hour ago, not too long. So it's completely dry, ready to go. And you can do this while it's wet. So don't feel like you have to stop just because yours is wet and mine's dry. You can keep going. Remember, we're having fun. And for this one, just playing with the idea of the crown here, I want to squeeze out some yellow. And I'm pretty liberal with it there. And then I'm going to take my brush that I cleaned a little. My brush that I cleaned a little earlier. And then I'm going to move that yellow around. I'm not being precise. I don't want to be precise. You can be precise, but I'm being pretty loose with it here. And one of the reasons I didn't want to be too precise with this was, again, kind of referencing back to some of Andy Warhol's silkscreen work, some of the pop art silkscreen work where things weren't lined up exactly perfect. So I don't mind if I color outside the lines. And those white lines were really just a guide for me. So they don't need to remain too visible once I get the yellow down. They can. It doesn't hurt if they stay there. But I'm just trying to move some of this paint around a little bit. Fill in some of these shapes. And again, the colors are completely optional. You can choose whatever colors you want when you're doing this. You can doodle anything you want. Actually, this morning when I was thinking about whether we were going to do the crown again, I had a few other things I had in mind, but I wanted to stick with the idea that we had in the picture. So we'll do that crown. I'll keep some texture in there. And then I wanted to show you all another really cool innovation, great innovation, that abstract design to go with these pouches, because this is going to be the next thing that I play with. So this is a set of tips. And again, Plaza has these. They're actually a part of that Instagram giveaway. So anybody who's entered for those giveaways, you're in the running to get quite a handful of these tips because they come in really handy. And I never like to have just one set because if they clog up, you can unclog them, but it takes some time. So I'd rather just keep a whole bunch of them around personally. But what this is, it's a lot like cake decorating tools. I don't know how, can you guys see that okay? Where you have 8 different tips that give you 8 different effects in the abstract acrylic. And so you can attach them right to the pouch. And I'm going to choose our blue here. Let's go with our blue. Yeah. Take the cap off here. And then let's see, which one do we want to go with? I'm going to go with this. You guys see that's a dual tip. It's got 2 little prongs on it there. And I'm going to snap that, just twist it on like a cap. And then I go off the sheet for a second, just to make sure there's no little burp. And so you see, you get these great little effects. And so I'm going to take that and I'm going to start just drawing into our painting here. And we can do the same thing we did earlier, where we either touch it to the painting or we drop in from above. Now I messed that one up, but that's okay. I don't mind messing up because it'll turn into something else later.
It's funny with that double line, it looks like, like the screen's blurry. So
Oh,
it's making this really, really kind of cool, but like you kind of have to like make sure effect on there. Astrid had a question. You said regarding the primaries, the brochure you sent states they are safe. Does that mean more than one pigment is used? If that is the case, I would not be able to get true secondary mixtures.
So what, let me know the question again. The if the colors are what?
Regarding the primaries, the brochure you sent states they are safe. So I assume that references toxicity and them being non-toxic.
Okay.
Astrid, you can unmute yourself if that's not correct. And then I guess maybe this is a separate question. In the primaries, is more than one pigment used?
So good
questions. If that's the case, they're concerned about getting true secondary mixtures.
Definitely.
Okay.
So I can address that in multiple parts. So for the first part, they are safe. All of these colors are AP non-toxic. So there's no true cadmium, no true cobalt, no true cerulean, no heavy metal. But that doesn't mean that you can't get clean mixtures. In fact, a lot of those colors, especially for people starting out, will produce some dull or earthy mixtures. So for instance, a cadmium red will give you a very earthy purple. An ultramarine blue will give you a very earthy green, but they won't give you those bright colors that a lot of us want, especially when we're working in bright colors like this. So that's the first part I want to address, is just that they are safe, they're non-toxic. The next question I wanted to talk about is the primary colors, are they multi-pigment? The answer there is no. They're single pigment colors, so they're rich, but they are really, really clean mixing on our palette. Now, there are colors in the range that are multiple pigments, and they still mix extremely clean. We want to remember that we talk a lot about colors muddying, and that has more to do with us mixing color on our palette or in our space, because we are human beings. We're not machines. We're less mechanical. So if I'm mixing 3 colors on my palette, then there's optical coverage. Those pigments are going to lay on top of one another. Now, if Sennelier takes 3 or 4 pigments and runs it through their triple roll mill, those colors are dispersed much more evenly. So you can still get very clean color mixtures with multiple pigments. It essentially mills them in a way that our eyes see them as one pigment. And that varies depending on brand and color, of course. There's going to be exceptions to every rule. But I always like to remind people that just because a color has multiple pigments in it doesn't mean that it's automatically going to create muddy colors. That's kind of a old wives' tale kind of in the art community. So a lot of really phenomenally blended pigments can create clean mixtures, even if there's a number of colors in there. One example of that we use often in Sennelier is our Chinese orange. It's one of our most popular colors in oil paint, in watercolor, in the abstract now. So Chinese orange has a number of pigments in it, and it's still just this bright, beautiful, clean mixing color. And then, did I cover all of it, or was there was a third part to that? So we covered toxicity, we covered clean mixing.
I think that's it. You got it.
Okay. And then
the only other question.
I'm just going to open up the space here real quick and show just one example.
Oh, yeah, go for that.
Secondary colors. Just on my.
Is that the primary?
Oh, sorry, Tara.
What color is that? The red.
So this is the primary red.
Okay.
Using a PV19, which is a quinacridone red. And then primary yellow, which is PY74, which I want to say is a Hansa yellow or an Azo yellow base. So if I take those two colors, they're more translucent, which is great for this exercise. So we can mix those two colors and we can get just a really, really bright, vivid orange. The red's a little more intense right now, so I'll add a little bit extra yellow. And I've created a color wheel with all of these. They do give you some really nice bright colors. Of course, if you wanted some of those earthier tones too, then there are options in the range that'll create those for you. Ultramarine blue, as well as some of the other warmer reds, the Naphtol-based reds. But you can get these wonderful secondary colors. So not to worry there. We can even test to make a little purple here if you wanted to. So all these things we can continue to use in the painting we're working on too. I just want, since it came up as a question, I want to make sure that we're looking at how some of these abstract acrylics mix. And I know with purple, it's a little tough to see sometimes. So I'm going to add a touch of white to that in just a second. Actually, I'll use our abstract liner just to scribble out a little white. And then we can look at how many variations on purple, just those two colors, that blue and that red, can give us. Everything from this red wine kind of purple to, I don't know if you guys can see it in there, but it's a little bit more of a deep purple. So yeah, I would say that clean secondary mixtures are accomplishable, if not downright easy. All right. So I didn't want everybody to go blind as I was playing with that double line one. If it looked a little out of focus, I'm making a mess, but that's okay. So we have some of the other tips as well. One of my favorites being this flat tip here. And this flat tip, I'll show you why it's my favorite. So if we want to use it for doing something like an outline, then I can take it on its side. Let's see, can you guys see? I'll go up here. I can take it on its side and draw a thin line, or I can draw a wide line. So I'll keep showing that. Or, and what I find to be much more fun, I'll do it here so it doesn't mess up what I'm trying to do with the painting, is to lift it up a bit and you get these kind of candy ribbons. I don't know, very three-dimensional. See if I tip that, if you guys can see it a little better.
So cool. It's like a paint calligraphy pen, and then I can see what you mean with the ribbons. It's really
It keeps that three-dimensional quality. It's very sculptural.
yeah. Very
It takes a while to dry. I'm not gonna
cool.
lie about that. It takes a little while to dry. So if you're working on it and you leave it, say, overnight, it'll probably be dry the next morning. So I'm just going to play around with some of these lines here. And then one of the things I like to do is create kind of a cellular structures within that. So I'm going to take my cadmium red light hue liner, and I'm just going to draw a little square circle thing. And you see me doing that. If you have these liners, as you're squeezing it, you create that little air pocket like we talked about earlier. I use that to my advantage to pull in the color when I'm refilling it. But while you're working with it, you're creating an air pocket, you're squeezing it. So every once in a while, I tap it down on its nose, and that just pushes all the paint down towards the tip where I'm going to squeeze it out of next. I'm going to do the same thing over here. And then I want to take something like the yellow, and we'll go, I'm going to lift it up off the paper. So like we talked about, that kind of 3D printer effect. And that way I can go over some of those three-dimensional lines that I created earlier. Oops. And then this is where we can start to experiment if we want to. You know, we've created kind of the basis for the theme that we're working with, but now you can get really experimental in your own right and make it your own. I like to add in some kind of graphic lines. I'll do that for both the blue. Now, if I want to as well, remember, acrylic can be super diluted. So if I want to put down a little blue line there, and then I'll just take a really, you know, blend that out a little bit. And that just kind of creates a little shadow, a little dimensionality. And also, since I'm thinking of things like cards, if I did that, that'd be a really nice place to be able to write in somebody's name or the event that you're celebrating. And then I'm going to go back and add some more of my white highlights where I covered them up here. The liner. I know I'm a very messy painter. It's okay. I don't mind being messy as long as I'm having fun.
That's all that matters. And Astrid actually gave a great recommendation for some cool stuff I'll have to check out that gets acrylic paint off of literally anything. So
Oh yeah,
yeah,
that will be good to know.
yeah. I'm like you, so I need
I know I had my painting space, my studio. was in our apartment years ago. And, you know, it was a rented space, so I didn't want to damage anything. I was going to have to give it back at some point. So I bought the poly sheeting from the hardware store, and I put up clear plastic sheeting all around the room. I put down plywood and tarps on the floor. People were kind of scared when they came over. But
Well, yeah, because that's like Dexter setup.
exactly. But I made a lot of mess, and I didn't have to worry about it.
There you go. This is a question that I've had before from customers, so just figured I'd ask. The best tool to unclog the tips if you happen to leave the cap off and you know.
Great question. So I use a paper clip. The other thing I'll do if I want to make sure that the tips don't clog, I keep a couple baby food jars around, and I'll put some soapy water in there, warm soapy water, and I just shake it for a while. That helps clean out any of the acrylic paint that's left behind. But if it does dry up inside the tip here, then pushing a paper clip through there can help. It takes a little bit of work. It's not an easy process once it's dry in there, but it can come out.
Yeah, I like your baby food idea.
Crud cutter. It'll be really easy if you use that crud cutter. Just spray it with crud cutter, stick it in the jar, wait overnight, and it's going to all come out. You won't believe it.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
I was finishing an antique door on this old granary, and the door was like since 1870. And I was ready to do the final step of staining it. And this was a framer's shop. And she had frames. She had really beautiful paint on her walls. She had art that's supposed to be framed and all that around. And I dropped that can of stain, and I thought I was going to die. I called the owner and I said, you better be prepared for what you're going to see tomorrow morning. Well, when she came in, she didn't even know anything had happened. That's how good this stuff is. And it's not toxic.
Oh, fantastic. Now, crud cutter, I've heard of that for auto shops and things, right?
For what?
Like auto shops will use it for cleaning up things like oil spills or
I have no idea. All I know is I came across it and I didn't know what it did. And I bought some because I teach art too, and I have to get paint off the tables when the kids get carried away. And it worked so well that I carry it with me just in case I spill anything.
Fantastic.
It really is. You won't believe it. It's like
That's
a miracle.
great. So a little crud cutter and a baby food jar, and there you go.
It's in and you're fine. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and baby food jars are a great twofer because you get a snack out of them. So I highly recommend banana. Plum is pretty good. Liver's no good. Don't get liver.
No. Yeah.
So I love the fact that with the abstract, we can have a really, really beautiful quality of paint, but we can feel really free to express ourselves. You can see how much paint I'm using. And because one, I have a 4-ounce pouch, which is a lot of paint. But two, the price is just right. I can squeeze out as much paint as I want, and I don't feel like I'm wasting it. And with a lot of paints, especially, some of those colors that tend to be more expensive, I find myself really limiting the way I work when I'm working with those paints. Whether it's a cadmium or a cobalt or a cerulean, I'm really precious with it. And I find that I don't make my best work and I don't have the most fun when I'm being too precious. So paint is made to be used, and I want to use it all. I do. If all of us together could make it so that you know, we had no more paint for a few days, then that would be fantastic, because it'd mean we're all having fun. I think the world would be a much better place. But we can get a lot accomplished with a 4-ounce patch of paint. So I like to play with all these tips. They give us those varieties of lines. Let's see how dizzy this one makes everybody. So this one, I think this is the one that I used, that we did the photos with. This is a 3-prong. So I can get 3 lines of equal width. But it's got 8 different styles, and they're all unique. They're all very different. So I highly recommend those tips, those pouches. Now I know in the very beginning I talked a little bit about the paper, but I wasn't super in depth about the paper that I'm using, that we're using. So some of you guys may have noticed when you open your packets that it's a thick paper. It's a heavy duty paper. And it's made by Fabriano. Like I mentioned, they've been making paper for over 750 years. And this is the 120-pound mixed media. So the only thing heavier in this kind of category that you'd find is the 140-pound watercolor paper, which is also, you can also use that with acrylic. But I really like the mixed media. It's the perfect weight for me. You can see I'm putting down just a ton of paint, and it's not buckling. And then it holds it really well. And I get enough sheets that I don't feel like we're having to spend a fortune on paper every couple days. So these pads were designed to be really economical. But again, just like I was mentioning with the paint, I want to be able to feel like I can use it without fear of using too much of my income or running out. I just want to be able to be really liberal with the materials I'm using. So the abstract paint allows me to do that. And the 1264 pads, this guy is 120 pounds, 9x12, you get 40 sheets. So if you do a painting a day, which not many of us have the time to do, but I would love to do a painting a day, then this gives you more than a month worth of paintings. And it's just extremely pocketbook friendly. And it's still made in the town of Fabriano, Italy, in the same mill where we make all the Fabriano Artistico watercolor papers, where they've been making paper for that 756 years, I think it is now. Just a phenomenal place. So if any of you guys get out to Italy or France, you let us know. We'll tell you where to go.
So Asha's asking if the abstract is good on canvas too.
So I'm sorry, what was that one more time?
Asha was asking if the abstract paint and liners work well on canvas too.
They do, 100%. That is a really good point I didn't have in my notes. They work on such a variety of surfaces. So I like paper just because I can burn through it really quickly and not worry too much about my pocketbook or feel too precious about it. But 100% works on canvas board. We worked with a couple of muralists on some mural projects with it. So it works great on glass, treated concrete. If you're doing a large scale mural, it's a really great product for that, because with the exception of a few fluorescent colors that we make in the line, all of the abstract colors are light fast, so they're not going to fade. They are artist grade pigments, so they're going to hold up really, really well, no matter what you're doing with them, whether you're working on canvas with a brush or working on a wall with a spray gun, all varieties of applications. I even had one artist who was hand making their own traditional brushes that looked like brooms. They were just massive brushes, and they were diluting the paint with water and then applying it like a giant calligraphy brush to the wall. Do just a huge scale work with it.
I'm trying to picture how you do that on a wall in front of you, as opposed to like gravity. How does that work?
It was pretty drippy.
Yeah. Okay.
But where he applied it, the lines stayed much darker. So it was very interesting process.
Very cool. Would you mind get a chance showing where to see the light fastness rating and
Certainly.
opacity, if that's on there, or and the pigments?
Absolutely. So when we look at the pouch, there every tube or every pouch has an anatomy to it. So with the Sennelier abstract, we can look and we can see the name of the color and the color number. Let's see, I want to make sure that I have good, is that clear? So we have the color number, which is our Sennelier color number. So if you were to call us and say, hey, what pigment is in 686, then I could look it up for you. So it's not as important to you guys as it is to us. But the color name is very important. And of course, we have it in a lot of different languages there. A lot of us in the US, we want to see it in French, Spanish, English, so German in there. And then when you flip it over, other than all of the little details you'll find about the product itself, it's heavy bodied or that it works on multiple supports, that's all going to be written in the fine print. But you're going to see right here, it says pigments.
Yeah, it's hard. It is blurry, but maybe just the general.
All right. So I'll just give you a general description then.
Yeah.
It says pigment here, and it'll have a code, PV19. And if you're curious or an art supply nerd like me, you can Google that. You just look up pigment database PV19, and that'll tell you that the technical name for it is going to be, it's going to have two technical names, this particular color. It's going to be pigment is the P, V, in this case means violet. And 19 is the color for quinacridone violet, but it also happens to be the same pigment code for quinacridone red because it shifts towards the violet. Then you're going to see here, there's a little box, just a square. And if that square is empty, it means the color is transparent. If the square is black, colored in completely, then the color is opaque. And if the color is half black and half white or has a line through it, then it's semi-transparent or semi-opaque, depending on the brands you're looking at. But those things can mean the same thing or be different, depending on who it is. It's also going to say ASTM light fastness, and that's a standard that at least people selling within the US utilize. Many international manufacturers and countries are adopting it. And the ASTM light fastness tells you how it's going to withstand UV rays, how it's going to fade over time. So in this case, it's ASTM light fastness, and it has a 1 next to it, and a number 1. And again, this can vary by brand, but a number 1 for most brands is going to be the best you can ask for. It's the very best. A number 2 is still great, still artist quality. A number 3 is good, and it's still artist quality, but over time you'll see a little bit of a color shift. And then after number 3, they just put NA or say that it's not rated because it's either a color that they can't measure for one reason or another, like metallics, or it's a color that's going to fade fast, and they know it, so they don't spend all the money to do the testing. So then you're also going to see on pouches or on tubes, you're going to see the quantity, and it'll have both milliliters and ounces. So in this case, it's 4 ounces or 120 milliliters. And then you'll see where it's made. So that's also important because in this case, as I mentioned, the Sennelier products, they're made in France in the Sennelier factory in Brittany, using all the same pigments that we use for everywhere else. But you can tell a lot about a brand by where it's manufactured. Historically, English colors are going to look a little different than French colors, are going to look a little bit different than Belgian colors. So, if you are like me, you kind of nerd out about these things. Sennelier, their color palette is much more indicative of the French Impressionists. So it's got a brighter color palette. And, it's really going to lend itself to doing things that are impressionist and or working with brighter colors, like the pop art stuff that we're playing with today. And then all of those details are also going to be on things like the liners. We'll have all the same details here. The pigment code, this one says PB29, and that's pigment blue 29, which is ultramarine blue. And then it'll have the light fastness. This one has got a blank box with a T next to it, so it is transparent. And then ASTM light fastness #1, so the best we can get. Now, one thing that's on everything that I didn't mention on the pouch is this AP. So on all your paints, you're going to see either an AP it's called ACMI. It'll either have an AP symbol or a CL label. AP means it's non-toxic. If it has a CL, it means that there's caution labeling and that you'll expect to see additional warning labels on there telling you what to be careful about. So in the case of abstract, everything has this AP. It's all AP non-toxic. So I hope that
no lead in the abstract.
No lead, no cadmium, no cobalt, no heavy metals.
Right. Awesome. Thank you. I think it's just for anybody who paints or is interested in painting, it's good to know that this information is on the packaging, and that light fastness, depending on what you do, can be really important.
Very, very, especially for those people working with murals, or if you're designing a painting that you're going to be hanging, in a living room across from a window, then you're going to want to make sure that your colors aren't going to turn gray or fade out completely over time. Right. So fastness is much more important than we recognize.
So we have a couple more questions.
Certainly.
What do you wanted you to talk more about the large brushes that you were, I think, referencing with the handmade large brushes?
Oh, those, I'll have to look up who that artist was. He was using somewhere out of the Pacific Islands, his family was from, and he was making them out of traditional woods and straw and twine and all these different materials that are native to his family home. And they were just, it was almost like seeing him paint on a wall with a push broom. It was just amazing.
Very cool. And then Cindy asked, when you use a brush on the pigment, do you use a wet brush or a dry brush?
That's a good question. You can use either. So if I'm going to use a wet brush, like right now, then you'll see I can get these watercolory effects. And if I were to use a dry brush, which of course I don't have at the moment, let me wipe one off real quick. See how dry I can get it. But if I use a dry brush, the paint is heavy. Whoop, my hat got in the way. Sorry, guys. Paint is heavy bodied. Heavy bodied enough you can kind of scoop it up if you need to. And then you can apply it just like a thicker, thick acrylic paint. So a dry brush is going to give you more brush strokes. And it depends on the type of brush you're using as well. If you're using a hog bristle, it's going to be a much scratchier dry brush technique. With the synthetic brushes I'm using today, I get this great kind of smooth brush mark. I kind of equate the brush mark this creates to grooves in vinyl. It just creates these nice soft lines, not too scratchy, not too subtle, just perfect little brush strokes. So dry or wet, you can go both ways. Because it's a heavy-bodied acrylic paint with a lot of pigment in it, pigment density, you could even And I'll move this because it's got so much thick paint on it. Move that out of our way. I'm going to plop down the whole pad here for a second. So because it's got so much pigment density, I could even take, like if I want to go travel somewhere, I can take my abstract liners with me. You know, they fit in my backpack. They're not going to leak. I can squeeze a little bit out in the corner of my paper. And then I can even get some watercolor effects with it. And because it's acrylic, once it dries, it's going to be permanent. It's not going to resolubilize like a actual watercolor. But you can get the wide variety of effects. And you could do this on canvas. You could do it on paper. Of course, if we're talking about travel, paper can be a little more travel friendly. And it dries quicker than a watercolor because it's an acrylic. But this is just another technique to showcase whether it's going to work with a wet brush or a dry brush. It works with both, just depends on your goals. I know that's a little off topic from our pop art theme there. I'm sorry, but it shows a little bit of what you can do. In fact, if we want to stick with our pop art theme, kind of take on the project we were just doing, we could even use our liners. Draw our crowns. And then we can still go in and get some of our watercolor effects. Being a little bit more careful about the edges than I was when I was painting thick, because with the thick paint, I can cover it up better. But when you paint really thin, it's a little bit less forgiving. And then once I've done this, of course, I could go back in with my thicker paint and continue to do a lot of the techniques that we were looking at earlier, whether I'm working with the liner or the tips. Go back in. Draw with the heavier paint. So going back and forth from a thick viscosity to a thin viscosity is one of the benefits of working in acrylic paint. With a lot of other paints, with watercolor, you can't go thick. Watercolor, the binder just doesn't allow you to go thick. If you do, then it has a potential to crack or craze, which kind of creates these little alligator skins or bubbles, and it may never dry. With oil, you can also go thick and thin, but if you go too thin, it becomes what we call underbound, and the paint becomes more of a powder on the surface of the canvas. So if you go and paint on top of it, you can wipe it off. But with acrylic, it has a lot of potential as far as changing from thick to thin, varying your viscosity, varying from dry brush to wet brush. It's just a very, very versatile medium. Oh man, time is flying today. I could keep playing for hours with you guys. I love that I can look up and I see that some people are painting and having fun. That's really, really fantastic. I'm glad that everybody is involved in trying these things out, because the real goal of today was experimentation. I want everybody to take away, just a few tools that you can use in the paintings that you're creating, and the artwork you're making. It doesn't have to be the same artwork that we're all making, but it's kind of just adding to your little tool shed of techniques that can be used for other things. And the fact that I get to draw into a little bit of art history as we do that is just so exciting.
When you get a chance, Andrew, if you can and happen to have it, do you have anything that shows, we've seen what the paint looks wet when you're using the tips in more of a three-dimensional manner. Do you have anything that shows, kind of how much they shrink when they dry, or do they shrink, or?
Certainly.
Okay.
And any acrylic paint, good point. Any acrylic paint is going to have at least a little bit of shrinkage. Just because it's got water in it. So oil paint dries through oxidation. So it can actually swell a little bit in the drying process and then go back down to where it originally was. But acrylic paint has water in it, it dries through evaporation. So as you're painting with it, it's going to be a little bit fluffy, and then as it dries, it'll shrink as the water leaves it, the water and the volatile materials that are in there. Now with the abstract, we don't get, I don't know how we can show that. We don't get very much shrinkage at all. If you can see, is that visible, Tara?
I can see it. If somebody else wants, it's funny. It's the purple, to me, looks very flat, and it might have just been because that's how you applied it. But the white, I can definitely see the white overlapping right there in the middle, especially where,
exactly.
And you can see the dimension there pretty well, I think.
Exactly. Yeah, a lot of this was brushed out, or these lines I drew, I pressed really hard into the surface.
Yeah.
Absolutely see right here that when I did it with the thicker liner, or the tips, that it maintains that density. So if I run my finger across this painting, I feel bump, 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 bump. I can even feel the brush strokes here. Bump, 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 bump. Yep. So you can even see here in the heavier body portion. Oh, well, my lights are crazy. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see where the paint's like sticky.
A little thicker.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it does maintain a lot of its body, even though it has a little bit, keeps its peaks. Absolutely. Really great question. Now, the other thing to keep in mind for acrylic is that acrylic polymer, the binder for acrylic paint, is a milky color. You've all seen, or maybe you all haven't seen, but you could see acrylic matte medium or acrylic gloss medium. And when you look at those bottles, it looks like milk, right? It's a white fluid in a bottle, or a white gel in a bottle. So what that does is, when you're working, especially really thick, the whiteness of that, it's not an actual pigment white. It's more of just an optical white, like fog building up in front of our eyes. But when you're mixing paint thick, that whiteness kind of shows through in the color. So acrylic can have what we call a color shift as well. So it's good if you're trying to be really representational. You may want to keep in mind that things that you're painting are going to look just slightly darker than when you're painting it once it's dry. For me, for the way I work, for the things I paint, for this project, none of that is going to impact me. I won't see it. I won't feel a difference. But for some of those artists out there who are doing things that are more realist, more, if you're painting figures, then the color tone is going to shift a little bit from wet to dry. So that, yeah, acrylic has some very unique properties that it's good to be aware of. It's not necessarily a negative. It's just something to be fully aware of.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. That really is great. And it really does hold its shape. So that was cool.
Really great questions.
All right, so we have about 10 minutes left. So whatever you want to focus on.
All right, I will keep doodling, keep playing. If anybody has additional questions we can talk about, please don't hesitate to continue to let me know in chat. I can keep talking for hours, I'm sure.
Since the instructional part is pretty much done and Andrew is, just going to demonstrate more fun examples of what you can do with the tools. If you guys do have questions, go ahead and unmute yourselves and you can ask Andrew directly. That's fine at this point. If that is easier for you than typing them out.
Fantastic. Everybody's too busy painting. I love that. That is great news. The body and the three-dimensionality of these is just, it's so much fun to play with. It really is. It's great for experimentation. And now I'm gonna fill this white up again because I keep running out. Tara, I don't think I said thank you. I think it is so amazing that you and that Plaza put these on and allow for people to have access to so many tools and techniques and materials and experiences. It's really key to playing with materials, playing with ideas, playing with art, making sure that we all have a big toolbox full of ideas. We're not going to love everything, but we're going to find some things that work for us.
Hi, this is Rhonda. Can you hear me?
I can, Rhonda. How are you?
I'm great. I just want to thank you all for this project today. This is only my second class in art or painting, and I do quilt, and I want to start. I have these ideas. I want to learn how to put them down on paper so that I can design some fabric and designs on my quilts. And I just want to, I hope that you have more of these classes because like I said, this is only my second time taking an art class. And I'm a retired senior.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming in, Rhonda, and hanging out with us today. And I'm really excited to hear that you're incorporating these classes and art and ideas into your fiber work, your quilt work. My wife is also a fiber artist, and she likes to incorporate a lot of painting and fiber art together. And I think that they influence each other really well. So congratulations on jumping into this.
Thank you. Are there any specific types of paint to use for fiber art?
That is a great question. I don't know if Tara wanted to take that because there absolutely are.
Yes. Before I get into that, I just want to say that someone had mentioned earlier in the chat about an article that we had on the Plaza website about reading paint labels. I found it. So I just put that into the chat if anybody wants that link. Okay, and as far as painting on fabric, yes, there are different types of paint and dyes. So there are things within, I don't think that they have a medium for this in the Sennelier range, but in other brands, there's a fabric medium so that you can mix with standard acrylics typically. They come in the two major acrylic lines. And that, what it does is it basically makes the acrylic paint more flexible so it won't crack when it goes onto fabric. Because if you were to, I mean, acrylic is plastic anyway, but it would be more comfortable to move around. The fabric will fold more easily, so it extends and makes the fabric, the paint more pliable and appropriate for fabric. But then there's the whole world of dyes, and and then there's other paint made for specific fabrics, and then there's if you wanted to try something out, I highly recommend Angelus. It comes in small bottles. It is made for leather, but then very clear instructions on, they have different mediums for different fabrics. So if you wanted to do, it's very big in the shoe painting, the custom shoe painting world. But I find that just the packaging as far as the size of the jars, so it's not a huge investment into a lot of paint. And if you want to paint on different fabrics, they have a medium for specific fabrics that you can add to the paint. So it's sort of an easy, like 1 + 1 = 2 kind of situation. With that. And then the Jacquard line makes some great fabric paints. So but it just depends on the fabric you're using to find the appropriate paint.
Could you spell the name of those 2 lines, please, of paint?
Yeah, absolutely. I will put those in the chat. Here we go.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then I know we only have a few minutes left, but I happened to look up from painting here. Let me change my camera view so I can see it. Whoops. Where are we going? Okay, so I can see everybody. And I just saw something, so I'm going to call out on somebody, and I hope they don't mind too much. Barb, can you hold up your painting? I thought that looked awesome. I saw it through the camera as you were moving.
Well, and I was going to mention, I have Parkinson's. So using these liners are not easy for me to hold and do a straight line. So like my first one was a comedy of errors.
I love it.
But it's pop and it's experimentation. And then I got a better by holding both hands with it. But I'm anxious to try the pouch because I think that might be even easier.
Yes, I think the pouch with the tips is going to be key for you. It's much easier to squeeze.
Yeah. But thank you. And thank you, Tara, for, I'm so glad I'm here in Nashville next to Plaza Art. But this is so much fun. And you guys give us so much information for such a low price. And we get new supplies. So that's even better. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. We really appreciate you being here. And that's very sweet things. Thank you.
Now, did anybody else want to hold up what they've been playing with on their camera while we're here? Feel free to. Just make sure you say something. Turn your mic off and say something if you do that, because then you'll pop up on my screen and I can see you.
This is what I did.
Oh, Kim, that is beautiful.
Thanks.
That is so cool.
Can you guys see it?
Absolutely. When life gives you lemons, you just paint it.
Yes. Nice job. Very cool.
Thank you.
Very cool. Anybody else? I love it. I love it. I love it. It makes me so happy to see what people create.
Me too.
So if you do decide to, just a reminder, if you do decide to post it here or post on social media, what you created, there are 2 hashtags. There's, I'm gonna put them in the chat. There's create with art, and then Andrew, which one do you want for savoir faire?
That's a
Or
good
which
question.
one do you want in general?
If you hashtag on any of your posts, if you hashtag or link to us at Art Savoir Faire, then that'll make sure that I see it personally and that our social media team gets to take a peek at it. And we love to see that stuff.
Awesome. All right. Whoops, sorry, just sent it directly to Sherry. Sherry, I'm gonna answer your question in a second. I'll send it to everyone. There we go.
Now I'm gonna call on one other person here real quick. Joel, are some of your paintings behind you that I see in your image? Fantastic, I love it. I always like peeking a little bit when I'm in these things, seeing what artwork people have. Oh, is that watercolor? That's fantastic.
Awesome work.
Oh, you're on mute, Joel, if you're.
Okay, it's alcohol dye on metal.
Oh, even better. That's fantastic.
Very nice.
And when you say on metal, is it on dye bond or on aluminum or?
Aluminum.
Okay. So such amazing stuff happening now. You know, it's paint is not just paint anymore. Everybody has a variety of surfaces, a variety of materials. You can work more textural or less textural. We're really in the best time to be creative ever throughout history. More colors, more tools. I love the sheen on those, Joel. Those are great.
That's acrylics this time.
And is it still on metal?
Yeah, aluminum.
Very cool. All right, well, we're at time. Anybody have any last minute questions for Andrew or myself before we say goodbye? No? All right, well, on behalf of Plaza, once again, you know, this is fantastic, and I really appreciate you guys joining us today. We sent out a new invite email this morning for our next event, which is very cool, sort of everything you ever wanted to know or didn't know you wanted to know about R&F pigment sticks, which are a super fun, versatile product. Really great artists who will be doing that for us. So if you join us for that one, that would be great. And Andrew, thank you so much. You know, as expected, this was awesome, and hope you can join us again soon for another one.
I would love to. Thank you so much, Tara. Thank you everybody for jumping in, taking some time out of your day and hanging out with me.
All right, thank you all. We hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.